Assalamu alaikum. Ciao, konnichiwa. Good morning, bonjour. Good morning, good morning, good morning. This is Ken at 10. How are you today? I hope you're doing well. We certainly are. Had a great day yesterday. I'm really fortunate to be doing my job. Love meeting people and finding out different things. Just yesterday, in one day, had a chat with someone about their past where they used to go with their wives by tandem bicycle down to Brighton and on the way stop at a pub and then end up getting cockles and winkles in Brighton and then cycling all the way home again. And then another couple moving to the coast and looking forward to, really excited about their retirement plans. Another lady moving up north to be nearer her daughters. It's just lovely hearing about people's lives. I always feel privileged to be kind of in the middle of that and hopefully someone that helps to facilitate that. I always think when we're valuing a house, people are asking about the value, yes, but they also want to know, the route. What's the easiest way to do this? How can we do this? What's the best thing to do? Do we buy or do we sell? So part of our job is to sell the house, but also part of it is to get them where they want to be, wherever that may be, for whatever that reason may be. And understanding that becomes both interesting and motivating, because if you know why and how somebody wants to move and where, all of a sudden you put yourself in their position. You think, right, how can we make this happen for them in the best possible way so they get the best possible price and also the best possible outcome depending on their situation. For some people, the most important thing is a very quick sell. For others, they have time and therefore can afford to test the market maybe a little bit more. But it's always interesting. Few things today. I wanted to talk about gazumping, and I'll tell you why, because it's becoming more and more common. People are talking about it, some people are wondering just what it is, how you prevent it, what you can do about it, and what the law says. So I just put a definition of gazumping on the screen there for you. Gazumping is where you've made an offer on a property, and because in the UK your offer is always what we call subject to contract, meaning that anybody can make a higher offer at any time and you can lose that house. And that is a sad frustration and reality of the way that it works. Subject to contract means anyone can pull out at any time with no financial penalty. In Scotland, they have a different system where you're financially committed from day one, and I do envy them that. But in the UK, it can be the Wild West out there, and it can be totally heartbreaking once you've buried your heart and soul into a property, especially in this market where prices have risen so rapidly. It's become quite common that, people make an offer and then someone else comes along and makes a higher offer. It's very frustrating. In the main, most vendors will honor the agreement that they have with purchasers. That's what I found generally. But of course, it does depend on the amount of money we're talking about. So put yourself in a seller's position. Let's say somebody comes along, you've agreed a deal with somebody and somebody else comes along and, having seen it previously, now decides to offer. And by the way, with regard to that, once we've agreed a deal and the vendor and purchaser are happy, we don't show from that point onwards. But of course, what can sometimes happen is somebody that's viewed previously the week earlier or the day earlier or the same day even as the buyer, the buyer that's been agreed on it, can then make a subsequent offer. And the law says that as far as an agent's concerned, we have a duty to disclose all offers to our clients within 24 hours of receipt. So the agents don't actually have a choice in this. We have to forward the offers. Most vendors are decent folk and they don't want to do this to their buyers. And if, somebody else has offered £1,000 more, sometimes even 5 or 10,000 more, vendors will tend to say, look, I've stuck with it. I've honored the deal and I'll stick with it. But the question does become, how much is the point where you cannot ignore what's being said by another buyer? And for different families, that means different things. A wealthy family might think nothing of taking off of 20,000 less than someone else. Not so wealthy family might think 20,000 is too much for my family to lose, or 10,000 is too much for my family to lose, or 5. It depends. We had an example of that years ago where a friend of mine was looking to buy in another area, and it seemed like he felt like there was a little cartel with the agents locally where he just couldn't find, every time he called about something, couldn't even view it, and ended up seeing one go under offer. And we ended up walking into the estate agent, showing the cash he had on offer, offering over the asking price and securing that property over somebody that had already seen it. Now, that's unfortunate for the person that had already seen it, but that's the kind of tough market we can be in sometimes when supply is limited. And, there is a balance here. At some point, the market will find its own level. If you have several people offering over the asking price, then vendors will tend to go not just with the money, but with the circumstances, and sometimes with the people they like and the people they trust, because the opposite of gazumping is where people take you to the last minute and then do a thing called Gazumping. And both sellers and us as agents worry about this. We worry that someone's going to come along, make an offer, and then at the last minute before exchange, they're going to do this, Gazunder you. And that means at the last minute to offer lower than the first offer they made, leaving you in a position where you are likely to lose your onward purchase if you don't accept a lower offer. Now, this is blackmail. I think it's nasty. And I'm always delighted when my clients turn around and say, actually, no, we'd rather go back on the market for less money than accept less money from this person that's done this to us. But it does happen. So that's Gazumping and Gazundering for you. Awful stuff. If you want more information on property generally, by the way, we do a weekly podcast. It's available on iTunes and Spotify. Is called the Buyer and Sellers Property Podcast. And if you search Ken Humes Podcast on those platforms, it will come up. It's the one with the dog and all the phones. So do have a look for that, download it. Hope you enjoy it. The last episode we did was with Paul Champlina of Landlord Action. Very interesting guy, one of the most prominent figures in property today. And he's all about landlord and tenant, evictions and that sort of thing. He's at the sharp end. And it was an interesting, quite a revealing chat with him about the pandemic, what's happened since and what's happening right now. Property news today. House prices climbed by 10% is reported by the BBC News website and Sky News, City AM and the Daily Mail. And it says the average property price climbed by 10% to May, with that showing the typical value hitting 254,000 as stamp duty holiday drove the demand. Home movers making a move upwards saw the highest raise at 296,000, which is 10.7% more than in May 2020. And first-time buyers also saw a huge increase, with the average paying 9.5% more than last year. But this has to be tempered with a look locally, because there are markets within markets. Just because up north is rising by 10% or more, sometimes here in London it's much less or much more than that. We've experienced growth of around 5% in the last year, which is substantially lower than many outside of London areas, particularly holiday type destinations. If I had £1 for every time somebody told me they were moving to a holiday type destination this year, I'd be a very rich man. So yeah, things are changing. And it's interesting to see, and kind of, if you think about it, obvious, another article that comes from the Express, the Mail, the Mirror and the Sun, which is that 1/5 of house prices now outstrip the local average salary in their growth. And this outprices local buyers, but is likely to happen where people are cashing in quite often from London house prices and going to another area. So they have more money, and the local salary has no bearing on the house prices locally, particularly in areas where people are retiring too. And it says that booming house prices mean more than 1 in 5 properties have made more money in the past year than their owners. The average worker took home $30,500 in the past year, but 21% of homes in Britain earned, brackets, more than this amount, Super estimates. If found in the southwest, they're most likely to be earning more than the average salary in the region. In the past 12 months, 29% of homes in the region increased in value by more than the average salary. Amazing, isn't it? Just by buying a property, you can make more than an average salary in some areas. Absolutely extraordinary. Mortgages is in the news again, and this is something on the BBC. Mortgages are being refused for self-employed and those who took COVID grants. Something we've been reporting on for a while. Do you remember when the government said, with the furlough and the COVID grants, everything else, they won't affect your ability to get finance? What they failed to mention was they don't control the loans. Lenders control the loans, and they will make the decisions as to who gets those loans. And unfortunately, they're backing away from them. Specifically, NatWest and the Royal Bank of Scotland are refusing mortgage applications from people who took government self-employed income support grants. And the Yorkshire Building Society and TSB said they would need evidence of businesses having recovered from the pandemic. Most of the lenders the BBC contacted also said they will not accept mortgage applications from people currently on furlough. They also do not include furloughed income as part of their affordability assessment. So most frustrating for people that have been caught in the pandemic and are now fine, but find that they can't move anyway. Really, really frustrating. Asking rents exceed £1,000 on average as city centres start to recover. This is data from Rightmove showing that asking prices for rents outside of London have topped £1,000 per calendar month for the first time. The quarterly index trends says that more than 470,000 properties it's based on found that in London, the average rental in the second quarter of this year was £1,007, up from £982 in the first quarter. The time it's taking has come down as well to 21 days on average. So, interesting to see that rents are starting to rise again. And that indicates that, city centres are back on the bounce now. They're starting to recover as people come back in to commute to work. And certainly something that we'll welcome here in London, where, it's been a bit of a dead space, central London particularly. We've been okay here on the outskirts, but in central London, it's been, absolutely dead as a doornail, as they say. Costs attached with downsizing in housing as well. One of the big problems we have supply in the UK is the lack of people wishing to move out of their homes when older, and they don't actually need the family-sized home anymore, but they don't necessarily move. And Hargreaves Lansdown have done a study on this, and it shows that 2 in 3 people would consider downsizing to a smaller home in retirement, but others say they're too attached. So you could read that the other way around. 1/3 of people are in homes that are much larger than they require, but are not downsizing, even though they can make a big profit by doing so. This is the old problem of how do you incentivize people to move out the family home so families have more supply of property? Difficult one, that, because, if you spent your whole life paying for your home and you're comfortable and happy there, why shouldn't you stay there, on the one hand? On the other hand, we do have a housing crisis, and there are families that could well use the extra space that those homes provide. I think the balance would be for the government to incentivize older people, perhaps beyond retirement age, with zero stamp duty on their purchase, so that they're incentivized to get out. Or if you really want to make sure they get out, then actually cut stamp duty for buyers of those homes where people are retiring. And then what you'd find is there'd be a boom in prices for those where there's a retiree, and that would help those people incentivized to move on. So I do think there are ways and means if you really want that to happen, and it certainly would help the market generally. Apart from that, another busy day today on valuations, another 4 today, which is always great. And looking forward to it as always. So I hope you have a fantastic day. Thanks so much for watching today. If you haven't been here before, please do like and subscribe, because we love having you along, knowing you're there and knowing you're watching. So stay safe, look after your friends and family, and have a fantastic day.